He hadn't heard his mother laugh in months. But there she was, shoulders shaking slightly, eyes wet from joy, not pain, clutching a napkin in one hand as she tried to catch her breath between chuckles. Across from her sat a woman, not much older than 30, telling a story in soft Spanish, her hands animated, her smile warm but never forced. Marcus stood in the hallway out of sight. He didn't dare move, didn't want to break the spell. The woman's name was Sofia Alvarez. He only knew that because she'd introduced herself 3 days ago when she showed up for the caregiver role. Quiet voice, no perfume, no unnecessary chatter. She'd taken the schedule, nodded and gone straight to work. Marcus barely noticed her after that. That was how he liked things, quiet, predictable, uncomplicated. Ever since his mother moved in, his house had become something he no longer recognised. A parade of nurses and home aides, some well-meaning, some careless. He was tired of strangers in his kitchen, tired of the noise, the pity, the way everyone tiptoed around him like he was the one fading. Sofia was different. She didn't tiptoe, but she also didn't intrude. She showed up early, stayed late when needed, never asked for favours or brought her personal life into the job. Her clothes were modest, her hair always tied back. She never seemed rushed, but never lingered either. Still, something about her made the air in the house lighter. Marcus noticed things he didn't expect to notice. The way she listened, really listened. The way she prepared his mother's tea just right, even though no one told her how. The way she sometimes hummed while folding blankets, as if she'd forgotten anyone else was in the room. And then one night he saw her do something strange. He had just returned from a late meeting, stepping into the foyer with his shoes still damp from the rain. He passed the kitchen on his way to the stairs, then stopped. Sofia stood by the counter, unaware of his presence. She opened her own canvas tote bag and gently slid a few bread rolls and a sealed container of soup inside, not from the fridge, from her own lunch. Then, from her back pocket, she pulled out a small folded paper. A list, with names, check marks, notes in small tidy handwriting. Marcus narrowed his eyes. She wasn't stealing, that was clear. But what was she doing? He didn't ask her the next day. He wasn't sure why. Maybe he didn't want to embarrass her. Maybe he didn't want to know. Instead, he watched. Over the next week, he noticed she always left the house a few minutes after her shift ended, carrying that same bag. And always with something inside that wasn't there before. One day, she even paused outside the house, just briefly, and pulled out a notebook, wrote something down, looked up at the sky, then smiled softly before walking off into the dusk. That smile stayed with him longer than he cared to admit. Marcus Wellington wasn't the kind of man who followed his employees, wasn't the kind of man who got curious about the lives of people who came and went in silence. But something about Sofia Alvarez felt unfinished. And curiosity, when it comes quietly, almost always brings company. Marcus didn't plan to follow her. At least that's what he told himself. He happened to be home early that day. Another board meeting had been cancelled, and instead of heading to his usual steakhouse for a solitary dinner, he parked his car at the end of the block and waited. From the front window, he watched Sofia say goodbye to his mother, gentle as always, helping her with the cardigan sleeves, fluffing the pillow behind her back. Then she picked up her bag and walked out the front door with that quiet grace he had come to recognise. She didn't see him, didn't suspect a thing. She turned left at the corner, then right at the light, walking at a steady pace, like she had somewhere to be. Marcus waited a moment, then slipped on his jacket and followed on foot, staying just far enough behind. It felt ridiculous. He was a grown man in polished leather shoes, following a caregiver like some suspicious neighbour. But something in his gut told him this wasn't about suspicion. This was about understanding something he couldn't explain with spreadsheets and trust funds. Sofia crossed 2 more blocks, passing the grocery store, a shuttered bakery, and a boarded-up laundromat. This side of town was older. The kind of neighbourhood where chain stores didn't bother opening anymore. Where murals on brick walls faded faster than they were repainted. Finally, she stopped in front of a squat cinder block building with peeling paint and a crooked hand-painted sign. St. Brendan's Community Centre, all are welcome. Marcus slowed, keeping his distance. Sofia knocked twice. A woman in scrubs opened the door, beamed and hugged her. Sofia handed her the bag of food, then slipped inside. Curiosity tugged harder. Marcus waited until the door closed, then crossed the street. There were no blinds on the windows, just simple curtains, half drawn. Through the gaps, he could see folding chairs arranged in a circle, a whiteboard covered in Spanish verbs and pronunciation notes, a stack of notebooks on a worn metal shelf. Sophia was at the front of the room, setting down flashcards. One by one, a group of elderly men and women trickled in, some with walkers, others in worn jackets, faces weathered with time and struggle. Immigrants, he realised, mostly Hispanic, a few Middle Eastern, a woman in a sari, a man with a limp. Sophia greeted each of them with a smile and a hug or handshake, offering water, adjusting chairs. Then she began. He couldn't hear the words, but he didn't need to. Her eyes lit up when she taught. Her hands moved like they were part of the story. And when one of the older women got a phrase right, Sophia clapped with both hands like it was the most important win of the day. Marcus stood there, hands in his coat pockets, trying to make sense of it. She wasn't paid for this. That much was obvious. The centre looked like it ran on leftover hope. The heater buzzed in the corner like it might quit at any second. But there she was, showing up after working all day, using her own food, her own notebooks, her own heart. Something shifted in Marcus. He wasn't sure what, but it was there, like the first crack in a wall he didn't remember building. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen, warm and sharp like it always was at 7:30. Sophia stood at the counter, quietly pouring a cup for Marcus's mother. The house was still, the kind of silence that only happens before the city wakes. She hadn't noticed him enter yet. "Long night?" Marcus asked, his voice more casual than he felt. Sophia didn't jump, she just turned slightly, offered him a polite smile. "Not really, just full." He leaned against the fridge. "Full?" She paused, carefully placing the coffee on a tray. "The centre had more people than usual last night." He raised an eyebrow. "You volunteer there?" Sophia nodded, gently folding a napkin. "Twice a week, sometimes more if they're short on hands." Marcus watched her closely. "That's where you bring the food?" Sophia hesitated, just for a second, then she met his eyes. "Yes, some of the older folks don't have much. A little soup helps the lessons go down easier." He didn't speak right away. The sound of the clock ticking filled the space between them. "You didn't mention it," he finally said. She looked at him calm. "You didn't ask." That made him smile, just barely. "Fair enough." Sophia picked up the tray, ready to head upstairs, but he stopped her gently with his voice. The building looked old. Broken heater? She tilted her head, surprised. "You've been there?" He shrugged. "Drove by last night." Sophia's shoulders tensed slightly. She set the tray back down. "Were you following me?" Marcus hesitated. "Not exactly, I was curious." Sophia crossed her arms, but there was no anger in her face, only guardedness. "Why?" "I guess," he exhaled, "because you confuse me." She raised a brow. "That's not usually a compliment." He smiled again, this time more genuine. "It's not an insult either." She softened then, a little. The kitchen felt warmer somehow. "You really care about that place," he said. "I do." "And the people?" "They're not just people to me. They're stories. They're lives that don't always get seen. Teaching them English is just a way to give some of it back." Marcus nodded slowly. Then, surprising himself, he asked, "What do you need?" Sophia blinked. "Excuse me?" "For the centre," he clarified. "You said the heater's broken. What else?" She laughed, a dry, tired laugh. "I mean, what don't we need?" "Start with the heater," he said, "then make a list." She studied him for a long beat, as if trying to decide whether to believe this version of him. "Why are you offering?" she asked, not unkindly. Marcus didn't look away. "Because I've spent a lot of time fixing things that don't matter. Maybe it's time I try something else." She didn't smile, but something in her face relaxed, a wall lowered. Then she picked up the tray again and said quietly, "I'll bring the list tomorrow." And just like that, something shifted between them. Not everything, not yet, but enough. The next morning, Sophia handed him the list. It wasn't typed, just a single sheet of lined notebook paper, folded in half, the ink slightly smudged like it had been written quickly, maybe on a bus ride or late at night. Marcus unfolded it over his morning coffee. 3 space heaters, 25 notebooks, whiteboard markers, black, blue and red. A few folding chairs used, but sturdy peanut-free snacks. 10 Spanish-English dictionaries if possible, bus tokens, any amount helps. At the bottom, in smaller handwriting, she'd written, "Sorry if this is too much. We usually just do what we can with what we've got. S." He stared at it for a while. No demands, no guilt, no grand speech about donations or sponsorships. Just needs, human, humble needs. That afternoon, instead of going to the office, Marcus made calls. Not to assistants, not to middlemen. He looked up hardware stores, discount supply chains, local non-profits. By sunset, 3 new space heaters were delivered to St. Brendan's under the name Friend of the Centre. No one knew it was him, not even Sophia. The next day, a delivery van pulled up with 25 spiral notebooks, a box of bilingual dictionaries, and more than enough markers to fill a teacher's desk drawer. A handwritten card was tucked in the box. "Keep going, you're doing good work," a neighbour. Sophia didn't say anything to Marcus the next morning, but her eyes were brighter, her steps a little lighter. She still brought her own soup, still wore the same worn-out grey sweater, still laughed gently with his mother as she refolded towels or organised pill bottles. But every now and then she would glance at Marcus when she thought he wasn't looking. Not suspiciously, more like searching. He pretended not to notice. He told himself it didn't matter if she knew. But when she passed by him in the hallway one evening, her hand brushed his arm, barely a second, and she said, "Thank you for being curious," before walking away without waiting for a reply. That night, Marcus stood alone in his study, looking out at the street below. Something was changing, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't want to stop it. It was a quiet afternoon. Rain tapped softly against the windows, and the house felt slower than usual. Like even time itself had decided to sit down and rest for a bit. Marcus had just come downstairs from a call when he heard his mother's voice, soft and low, coming from the living room. Sophia was there, kneeling beside her, wrapping a warm shawl around her shoulders. "She used to do this for me when I was little," his mother chuckled. "Now it's your turn to look after me, huh?" Sophia smiled gently. "It's an honour, Mrs. Wellington." Marcus stayed by the doorway unnoticed. After a while, his mother dozed off, and Sophia quietly folded laundry on the couch. Marcus cleared his throat as he entered. "You're good with her," he said. Sophia looked up, not startled, just present. "She's easy to love." He took a seat across from her. There was a pause, comfortable, almost. He didn't know exactly why he spoke next. "You mentioned once that you were in school, social work." Sophia nodded slowly, folding a blanket with practiced hands. "Yeah, for a while." "What happened?" She sat back, thoughtful. "Life. My mom got sick, bills piled up. I had to choose between a degree and keeping the lights on." Marcus nodded, understanding more than he expected. Sophia continued, her voice steady. "I thought I'd go back eventually, but eventually kept getting pushed further away." "You still want to?" he asked. She smiled, a bit wistful. "Every day." There was a moment of silence, then she added, almost to herself, "I was working on a thesis before I dropped out. It was about underemployment in immigrant communities. How language barriers, lack of access, and legal status all keep people stuck, sometimes for generations." Marcus leaned in. "That's why you teach at the centre?" Sophia nodded. "I used to be one of them. My family came here when I was 10. I remember watching my dad, this brilliant engineer back home, take a job mopping floors just so we could survive. He never complained, but I saw what it did to him." Her voice caught for a second. "He passed away before I ever got to show him I could make it." Marcus didn't speak, he just listened, really listened. "And now," she continued, "I try to help the people he reminds me of. People with quiet strength and big dreams, but no one willing to bet on them." He swallowed hard. "Maybe they just haven't had the right person believe in them yet." Sophia looked at him, eyes searching. There was something in her gaze that made his chest feel too small for his heart. "I'd like to help," he said softly. "Not because I feel sorry, but because I believe in you." She didn't smile right away, just sat there, letting the words settle like rain on soil. Then she whispered, "That's not something I hear very often." "Maybe it should be," he said. Sophia folded the last of the laundry, stood up and gently placed it in the basket. "Thank you, Marcus," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Really?" He watched her walk down the hallway, the soft light catching the curve of her shoulder, the way she carried herself. Not like someone broken, but like someone who had learned how to stay standing in a world that didn't always make room. And in that moment he realised she wasn't the one who needed saving. He was. A week passed, maybe 2. Sophia never brought up the conversation again, and Marcus didn't push it. But something in the air between them had changed, softer, warmer, a shared understanding that didn't need constant revisiting. Marcus, however, couldn't shake her story. He kept thinking about her father, the man who scrubbed floors with the mind of an engineer, the way Sophia said it without bitterness, just quiet grief. like a scar that had healed but still ached when it rained. One night, after putting in a half-hearted attempt at dinner, Marcus sat at his desk and opened his laptop. He pulled up the old community college website where Sophia had once been enrolled. It was late. The house was still. Outside, the streetlight buzzed. He filled out a form, asked questions, made some calls, gave a donation. Not a flashy one, but enough to cover tuition for a full year and then some. He asked that it be applied to a returning student in good academic standing with a background in community service. No name, no credit, just an anonymous note. For the student who hasn't stopped learning, even when the world told her to. The next day, a letter arrived at the community centre. Sophia opened it during her break, tucked between flashcards and worn-out dry erase markers. She stared at the paper, her brow furrowing as she read, then read it again. She turned to the woman beside her, an older volunteer, and asked, Is this real?" The woman laughed. "You've been given a blessing, honey. Don't question it. Just use it." Sophia held the letter to her chest for a long time. Her eyes brimmed, but she didn't cry. She just closed them, whispered something in Spanish Marcus would never hear, and folded the letter carefully into her bag, like it was something sacred. She didn't mention it to him. Not that day, not the next. But Marcus saw it in her. The way she walked, the way her eyes shone brighter again, the way she lingered just a moment longer before leaving the house each evening. Sometimes the best way to help someone is to let them think they did it all on their own, and maybe that's what love starts as. Not a grand gesture, just showing up, quietly, when it matters most. It came on a Tuesday. The kind of day where the sky was grey but not stormy, the air heavy with the smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet. Sophia had just finished folding the last blanket in the linen closet when Marcus found her in the hallway. "Hey," he said almost shyly, "got a minute?" She nodded, "Sure." He led her to the study, warm light, leather chairs, the soft ticking of the old wall clock. There was a folder on the desk, and beside it 2 mugs of tea. Sophia raised an eyebrow. "You're making tea now?" Marcus smiled, trying something new. She sat. He pushed the folder toward her. "I've been thinking," he began, "about what you said, about going back, about what you started but didn't get to finish." Sophia opened the folder slowly. Inside was a proposal, handwritten notes, printed articles, even grant opportunities. At the bottom, a cover sheet. Proposal, Marcus Wellington Foundation Community Access and Support Initiative. Director Sophia Alvarez, pending acceptance. She blinked, looked up at him. "This is for you," Marcus said quietly. "To run, to build, however you want. We'll cover the paperwork, the funding, the space. It's yours." Sophia stared at the papers, then at the man across from her. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll think about it." "I will, of course I will." But she didn't smile. Not really. Something flickered in her eyes. Gratitude, yes, but also something else. Something harder to name. She left an hour later, walking a little slower than usual. She didn't say much the next day, or the day after that. By Friday, she asked to leave early. Said her mum needed help with something. Marcus didn't question it. He knew. On Monday morning, there was a note by the front door. "Marcus, thank you for everything, truly. But I don't think I belong in that world. Please don't be angry. It's not about you. It's about me knowing when to step back. With gratitude, Sophia." No drama, no tears, just that same quiet honesty she'd always carried. Marcus sat on the front step for a long time that morning, holding the note in both hands. Not angry, not even surprised. Just hollow. Some people run when they're scared. Others walk away quietly, hoping no one notices the way their heart is breaking too. Sophia didn't come back the next week, or the one after that. Marcus tried not to take it personally, tried to respect her decision, the way she had asked him to. No calls, no emails, no surprise visits. But every morning, when he passed by the room she used to fold laundry in, or heard his mother ask, "Has Sophia called?" Something in his chest twisted a little. Still, he let her go, let her walk away with dignity, with space. But letting go didn't mean doing nothing. So Marcus did what he knew how to do. He took care of the background, quietly. No spotlight, no name on plaques. He called the centre and paid the utility bills in full through the winter. He arranged for repairs on the roof, using a contractor he trusted, and paying extra to keep things anonymous. He dropped off boxes of supplies at the back door, books, hygiene kits, warm gloves, always labelled, "From a friend." When he found out that Sophia's mother was on a wait list for a necessary surgery, Marcus called in a favour from an old connection at the hospital. No strings, no credit, Just a note sent to the caseworker. Her daughter is doing too much to carry this alone. Weeks passed, seasons edged toward change. One afternoon, Marcus's mother waved him over while he was fixing a loose door hinge. "I got something in the mail today," she said, holding up a cream-coloured envelope. Inside was a small invitation. "You are cordially invited to the St. Brendan's Spring Gala, celebrating community champions. Recipient, Sophia Alvarez." Marcus stared at it. A faint smile formed at the corner of his mouth. He didn't plan to attend. He wasn't sure if she'd want him there. But when the day came, something pulled at him. Not out of hope, not even closure, just curiosity and care. He arrived late, kept to the back of the room. No suit, just a plain blazer, no fanfare. From the far end of the hall, he watched Sophia step onto the small stage. The lights caught her hair, and her voice was steady as she thanked the people who had helped her get where she was. She held up the letter, the anonymous scholarship, and said, "Whoever you are, wherever you are, you gave me the chance to believe again. Thank you for reminding me that quiet kindness still exists in this world." Marcus looked down at the floor, his hands in his pockets, heart full and breaking all at once. He didn't go up to her after, didn't say hello, just watched, smiled faintly, and slipped out into the night. Some goodbyes don't come with fanfare. Sometimes love just means showing up without needing to be seen. The next morning, Sophia showed up at Marcus's door. No call, no text, just there. She stood on the porch holding a brown paper bag and a tired smile. "I brought muffins," she said, "still warm." Marcus blinked. He hadn't expected to see her again so soon, maybe not at all, but he stepped aside. "Come in," he said gently. They sat at the kitchen table just like they used to, except this time there was a silence between them that wasn't awkward, just full. Sophia opened the bag, pulled out 2 blueberry muffins, and placed one in front of him. Then she folded her hands, looked at him and said, "It was you, wasn't it?" Marcus didn't pretend, he didn't deflect. He just nodded once. Sophia exhaled, almost like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. "I should have known," she said softly. "The heaters, the books, the roof, even the hospital. I kept telling myself it was a coincidence or some miracle." "It wasn't supposed to be about me," Marcus said. "It was always about you." Her eyes searched his. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't want you to feel you owed me anything. Because I knew if I said it, it might make you walk away for good." Sophia looked down at the table, her fingers brushing a crumb aside. "I wasn't running from you, Marcus. I was running from the version of me I thought you couldn't possibly understand." He tilted his head. "And now?" She met his gaze. There was something steadier in her voice now. "Now I realise you understood all along. Maybe even better than I did." Marcus didn't smile, but his eyes softened. "You were never small to me, Sophia, not once." She looked away, blinking fast. I didn't know how to stand still when someone actually saw me." He reached across the table then, not grabbing, just offering, and after a beat she placed her hand in his. It wasn't a grand moment. There were no violins, no dramatic confessions, just 2 people, quietly finding their way back to something honest. After a while, Sophia leaned back and asked, "Did you mean it? That proposal? The foundation?" "I never offer anything I don't believe in." She nodded. "Then I think I'm ready." Marcus smiled, and for the first time in a long time, it wasn't the smile of a man who had everything. It was the smile of a man who had finally found something he didn't know he'd been missing. The first event for the foundation took place at St. Brendan's Community Centre. It was the same building where everything had started. Now it looked different. The walls had fresh paint, the heaters worked, there were new chairs and clean floors. String lights hung across the ceiling. Tables were lined with food from local restaurants. There were flowers in small glass jars. The room felt warm, not just from the heat, but from the people. Families, teachers, volunteers and students filled the space. Many of them had come just to see Sophia. She hugged them, laughed with them, and called most of them by name. Marcus stood near the back of the room. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a blazer and an open collared shirt. He didn't want attention. He only wanted to see her in her world, fully herself. Sophia wore a soft blue dress and simple earrings. Her hair was tied back like always. But something about her had changed. She walked with quiet confidence. She belonged here, and this time, so did he. When it was time for her to speak, she stepped to the front. The room quieted. Sophia looked out over the crowd and said, "This centre was never just about classrooms or supplies. It was always about people. About what happens when someone finally tells you you matter, you are worth the effort." She paused, her eyes briefly landing on Marcus. Tonight is not the end of a journey. It's the beginning of a new one. We're building something together. The room filled with applause, loud, joyful, honest. Later, after most of the guests had gone, Sophia and Marcus stood outside under a street lamp, the same one that always flickered but never quite went out. Sophia handed him a cup of tea. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" Marcus asked. "For not giving up," she replied, "even when I did." He didn't say anything right away, he just sipped the tea. It was too hot, but it didn't matter. The heat felt real. They stood there quietly, side by side. No big moment, no big kiss, just peace. Later that year, they got married. It wasn't a fancy wedding, no hotel ballroom, no orchestra, just St. Brendan's again. This time with candles, fairy lights, and the people who mattered most. Instead of flying to Europe or the islands, they went to Honduras. It was Sophia's idea. She wanted to see the place where her father was born. The place that shaped the man who had given her strength. Marcus didn't go as a rescuer, he went as her partner. Not to fix her, just to walk beside her. Back home, a small bronze plaque was placed near the centre's front door. It read, "The Alvarez Wellington Initiative for Second Chances." Because kindness doesn't need credit, it just needs to show up. And it did, every single day. Sometimes we meet people who don't try to change us, fix us, or impress us. They simply show up, quietly, consistently, and that's enough to change everything. If this story touched something in you, even just a little, I hope you'll carry that warmth into your own life. And if you believe the world needs more kindness that doesn't ask for credit, then maybe this is the kind of story worth sharing. If you felt something today, consider leaving a like. If you want to hear more stories like this, real, quiet and human, hit subscribe and join us again next time. And if there's a moment or a person or a story you carry inside, tell us in the comments. You never know who might need it. Thank you so much for watching until the end. From all of us here at Rain Inside, take care and we'll see you in the next story.